Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. We're on text 12. And today's March 19th, 2021. There's volumes there. There's also the red volume. There's a few additions. Hare Krishna. Welcome. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 12. Hare Krishna. Pravala, Vaidurya, Minala, Varchasa, Parisparat, Kundala, Mauli, Malina, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Parisparat Kundala Malina, Parisparat Kundala Malina, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Parisparat Kundala Malina, Kundala Malina, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Parisparat Kundala Malina, Parisparat Kundala Malina. Would anyone else like to recite the verse?
Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa,
Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa,
Parishpurat Kundala Malina,
Parisparat Kundala Malina.
Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa,
Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa,
Parisparat Kundala Malina.
Parisparat Kundala Malina. Pravala, coral, Vaidurya, a special diamond, Minala, celestial lotus, Varchasa, rays, Parisparat, blooming, Kundala, earring, Mauli, heads, Malina, with garlands. Translation. Some of them, so this is Shukadeva Goswami speaking about Brahma's vision of the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planets. Some of them are effulgent, like coral and diamonds in complexion, and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are some inhabitants who have attained the liberation of sarupya, or possessing bodily features like those of the personality of Godhead. The Vaidurya diamond is especially meant for the personality of Godhead, but one who achieves the liberation of bodily equality with the Lord is especially favored with such diamonds on his body. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayupakadamayam darati svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavam Shtam. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Shtam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vachikalpatu Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Vaikuntha Shiva Sadi Guru Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Glavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Paschatya Desha Tarine. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaivan Rotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tatojayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayana, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Pradesh Vabhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Text 12, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Srimad Bhagavatam. Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa Parisparat Kundala Mali Malina. Some of them, meaning some of the residents of Vaikuntha, are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion, and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we can imagine, let's say someone for the first time is coming to a morning of philosophy class, and it's a philosophy, and then we're talking about earrings and diamonds. Okay, and if you were to come tomorrow or the next day, we read from Bhagavatam, we're going to talk about airplanes. Okay, all right. So, well, I thought this is supposed to be like spiritual philosophy. So how's that relate to diamonds and earrings and airplanes? And yeah, the next verse reads, the ladies are as beautiful as lightning because of their celestial complexions, etc., etc. Okay, so where's the philosophy? Where's the spirituality like that? So this gets to, what is the very foundation, the very substratum of existence? So like someone on a spiritual path. So that all sounds nice. Oh yeah, that's nice, spiritual. So then what's your goal? Well, to realize the nothingness of everything, to realize that the oneness of all energy. Okay. So here, that Janmadhyasya, that's where Bhagavatam starts, that what exists in the effect, must exist in the source. So there's so much variety here. There's so many types of earrings here. There are, probably good. Yeah, I wouldn't know, but others here would probably know. Yeah, there's maybe thousands or tens of thousands of bland bread, maybe more than that. Okay, right. So earrings and diamonds and airplanes and personalities with beautiful forms. So that's here. That's here. So it must exist in its source. Meaning, if we get to the origin, if we get the very source, we don't find nothing. We don't find blandness. We don't find just white light. We don't find matter. We find spiritual variety. Spiritual variety. So yes, so This verse describes earrings. Future verses will describe airplanes. But those are not the sort of airplanes that pollute and that we need to dig up the earth for fuel or something like that. So similarly, this is a different quality of earring and diamond and coral described here. It's described that there are 5 types of liberation. And Prabhupada says that this verse talks about the sarupya. And there's also samipya, association with the Lord in Vaikuntha. Sarshti, equal in opulence with the Lord in Vaikuntha. Salokya, and residence on the same planet as the Lord, and Sayujya. So the devotee in a very pure state is not interested in any sort of liberation. Muktir svayam mukulitanjali sevate sman. So that's a prayer from a great Vaishnav who describes that the devotee is just interested in service. Okay. And then the irony is, then liberation is waiting at the devotee's doorstep, waiting to serve him or her as a maidservant. Devotee is not interested in liberation. Devotee has much greater purpose to serve Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unconditionally. Let me suffer in hell, wherever, pit, heaven, hell, wherever. And then once we have that attitude, then I'm giving up my God project. I'm giving up satisfying my senses, my ego, and let me serve God. Let me serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Then liberation is there automatically, even though the devotee doesn't desire it. Still, if it's part of their service, the devotee is ready to accept the 4 types of liberation: sarupya, salokya, samishta, sarshti. But the sayujya, that's the so-called liberation that means losing one's sense of personal identity and merging into the oneness, right? Many spiritual paths, the idea is either the oneness of the zero, of the nothing, or merge into the white light. Okay. And for the devotee, even though that sort of liberation it's a relief from the miseries that come from material desire, a devotee finds such sort of liberation to be abominable, abhorrent, because a soul who's realizing its essential devotional nature doesn't want to be Krishna, doesn't want to be God. Such a soul is enthused to serve Krishna, person to person. That's the ecstasy of the soul, realizing its devotional quality. Jivara Svarupa Hoy, Krishnara Nityadas. That's the essence. That's our essential Sanatana Dharma, the eternal function of the soul. And so the idea of the idea of merging, it's artificial anyway. Just like we can say the drop merges into the ocean. Well, it appears that way, but actually the drop retains its individuality as a drop. We can say a green bird has merged into the green tree. It appears that way, but actually the green bird retains its individuality. Similarly, whatever spiritual yoga process we might follow, Natvevaham jatuna samnatvam name janadipana chevana bhavishama sarvevayamatak param. Never was there a time that we did not exist, nor in the future will we ever cease to be. We are eternal individuals, and we are satisfied when we use our individual nature, our propensity to desire to serve Krishna with love and devotion. And so the devotee's not just not interested, but finds it abhorrent, the idea that I'll I'll merge into the oneness, and then I don't get to serve Krishna. And the idea is that more so like here we are as spiritual beings having a human experience, and as spiritual beings having a human experience, then conditioned life means we're under the illusion that I am this body. I am this body. And that I'll be happy if this body, either the gross body or the subtle body composed of mind, intellect, material ego, is satisfied. That'll be my happiness. That's the illusion. That's always chasing the carrot on the stick. And so in conditioned consciousness, we get to practice our eternal nature. We get to practice that's what sadhana bhakti is. Means we follow some basic guidelines like hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And this way we get to practice, and the more we practice, the more we get a higher taste, and then the more that other tastes become uninteresting. They fade in interest. Things that we used to do before we came to Bhakti Yoga. Vishaya vinivartante, nira harasya dehinam, raso varjam rasopyasya, param drishtra nivartate. That's the higher taste verse. And the more that we practice, the soul, when I say we, means the soul. And that's important in this process to differentiate between, okay, am I happy? Well, what is this I? Am I talking about my tongue, my belly, my genitals, my mind, my intellect, my false ego? The false ego, the mind that wants to be adored? Or am I talking about the soul? So the soul experiences that transcendental bliss that we get tastes of. These verses are like windows to the spiritual world. And we get taste of that transcendental bliss as we engage in devotional service. And so that's you might say that's the price of the ticket to fully enter into these forms and pastimes and trans-empirical earrings and diamonds and airplanes, to develop that taste. Yes. Now, related to this, some of you have heard this true story of mine. This was in 2002, and I was in a transformational seminar in San Diego, and in different ways, I got a lot of value from that seminar. With this particular one, well, this seminar, they did something called breath work. You're probably familiar with breath work. I wasn't that familiar with it. But anyhow, there I was on the ground. It was like a cathartic process. And I was going through my process, and they were giving some breath work instructions or something. And okay, and many seminars, I've been to over the past 40 some years. At the foundation is, I'll call it secular humanism or some sort of veiled Buddhism, where the idea, sometimes stated loudly, sometimes not, is at the core we are nothing. And I've been in seminar rooms where there's hundreds of people celebrating, jumping up and down, that I am nothing, I am nothing. I've seen it. Okay, anyhow, this seminar wasn't like that. They came from, they came from like a yoga Brahma Gyoti place. The idea is like at the core, we're all one, we're all one spirit. And there's definitely truth to that. Like when we attain enlightenment, then we realize we are God, and okay, things like that. We're all one. the ultimate reality is Advaitavad, radical non-dualism, lacking any when we ultimately get realized, there's no earrings. Yeah, how boring, right? Yeah, no airplanes, no transcendental airplanes. So anyhow, there I was, and I'm doing my best to remember Krishna in my personal psychological emotional process. And then some staff came, and they were very well-meaning. And they came to me there on the floor, kind of dark. You've all been in seminar rooms, kind of dark on the floor, lots of volume happening. And the two staff members came to me, and they lean over me and they go, David, just know that you are Krishna. They said that. Yeah. Okay, it's true. Yeah, and so, right. So they were well-meaning at this, and it's not like I have the realization of these residents of Vaikuntha who find it a bore in the impersonal liberation, but I could feel like in my juvenile, cynical way, my impulse was to go like, that's not really helpful for me, like that. But I didn't do it. I was polite. I was kind of like, that's not really what I needed to hear at this time. Okay, so that's it. That we're endeavoring to cultivate. No, I'm not God, and I'm not matter. I'm not God, and I'm not dead matter. I'm eternal spirit soul, and I'm a servant of Krishna, and I'm a servant of Krishna. So, yes. Okay. So, I feel very fortunate that we're exposed, because this is a spiritual life that is full of variety and music and color, not just like, because also even in some groups where their aim is to realize their God and the oneness of everything, even there might be kirtan and there might be things like that, but the idea is, or there might even be deity worship, but the idea is, well, you do that until you come to the point of realizing that actually you are the deity or things like that. So here the diamonds and the corals and the airplanes and the garlands and the earrings here and the clothing, the previous verse, pearl necklaces with ornamental medallions. Yeah, so we have all that here. We have all that here in this world. And this is just the dull reflection. This is just the dull reflection. And that when we become fully enlightened, then we experience Chintamani Prakarasat Masukalpavriksha Laksha Viteshu Surabir Abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrama Sevimanam Govinda Mari Pusham Tama Hambajami. Then there's atoms, and each atom is self-effulgent and self-revealing. Srimad Bhagavatam is self-revealing. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desires and abodes built of spiritual gems, spiritual diamonds, Chintamani, surrounded by millions of purpose trees and served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. And so we get to the original diamonds, the original ornamentation, the original mystic power, the original animals and flutes and music that is ever fresh, Ananda Chinmaya Sarujvala Vigrahasya, that where each atom, each earring, each form, tree, it's made of spiritual bliss, never deteriorating. And that's why, okay, so here we're reading about, we read about lotus flowers and eyes, blooming eyes like lotus flowers, pearl necklaces, diamonds and corals and earrings and airplanes. Okay, so we could, I guess there's fashion magazines, or you could read about celebrities who have this amazing house and jewelry like that. You say, well, so that's the same as Bhagavatam. No, it's completely different. Completely different. We can read about so many romantic adventures in Bhagavatam, so many chivalrous adventures. So yeah, well, you can go to the movie and also see. So it's the same. It's not the same. It's the same in the sense of like, sure, by looking at the shadow, we get some sense. We get some sense that the actual person or object has some form, but we really understand practically nothing about the form of the person or the tree just by looking at the shadow, right? The shadow lacks substance, but we get some sense that there is a substantial form from the shadow. So similarly, that there are chairs here and earrings here and airplanes here and pearl necklaces and music and relationships, that's the shadow. And so that's why, so this is so attractive. So we hear about these things from the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about the original source, the substratum of all existence that is effulgent with spiritual variety, spiritual form. And that's the goal. And in this process, the journey is the goal. So the goal is to, by hearing and chanting these verses, that's the eternal goal of spiritual life. We've done it. Okay. Now staying on this platform 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? So at least for me, for many of us, okay, so that's a challenge, and that's why Prabhupada gave us so many structures to help us do that. So I use that term self-revealing. So these verses, which to our mundane conditioning might seem like, again, well, it's talking about jewelry and clothes and airplanes. Oh, this is material. But actually each syllable is imbued with spiritual, transcendental, spiritual, blissful potency. And that's why whatever our conditioning, if we have just a little bit of a humble, submissive spirit, we read these verses, we hear these verses, and we get purified. And we get purified. Because this isn't like reading some celebrity magazine or going to some mundane Hollywood movie with adventure and opulence and jewelry and things like that. It's not like that. It's the difference of the shadow and the actual object, the actual person, the actual form. And so by hearing and chanting, our soul's natural attraction, our soul's natural love of Krishna begins to awaken. Our mind might say, well, how do I know? I mean, our mind and intellect can go so many places, and we can certainly analyze any aspect of this philosophy from a logical, rational point of view and find that it's strikingly wonderful, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says. And whatever our mind, intellect, senses, ego is doing, our soul is emerging in its natural happiness. And that's because these verses, these are describing spiritual reality, the world of the soul encased in a material body. In material world, it's like a fish out of water, right? And we all have a sense of that. That's why we're doing Bhagavatam here on a Friday morning to take a stand for a different reality, for a different reality. So this is the actual substance. It's not that the shadow doesn't exist. The shadow is real as a shadow. It lacks substance. So that's material pleasures like that. So here, not just this describes spiritual reality, but each syllable, whether in the Sanskrit or Prabhupada's English, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa, Paris Parakundala Mali Malina, some of the residents of Vaikuntha are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. Yes, each syllable, each word is identical to the absolute truth that it's conveying. And that's why, whether we understand or not, the soul comes alive the more we hear and chant. And so it's described in the Bhagavatam, Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtan Vedanta Stoya Bhadrini Vidunoti Saritsatam. Sri Krishna, who's the personality of Godhead and the Paramatma or super soul in the heart of all living entities, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, personally cleanses the desire for material enjoyment. That's the desire of the prayer of a devotional soul. Please cleanse my heart from material desire, because I'm still convinced it'll give me happiness, but I know at a deeper level, it's the source of my misery. Krishna personally cleanses the heart from material desire for one who's developed the urge to hear and chant his messages in the form of the Maha Mantra, in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, in the form of discussions with like-minded souls. And so these messages, this hearing and chanting, this is the most auspicious sound vibration. And we can experience that, right? It's of a different quality. And the more we give ourselves to the experience, then the more we become, I'll call it, attached. I know later today, I'm going to be conducting some coach training. And I know the theme is going to be about independence and dependence. And there's a lot, whether it's in personal growth, psychology, counseling, coaching, about don't be dependent. Don't be dependent. Don't be attached, right? I say that so much, right? Be non-attached. Here's the thing. The nature of the self is to be dependent and attached. Just a fact. It's just a fact. Okay? No, just be completely unattached, like just floating in the void, attached to nothing, completely impossible. It's good. I'm practicing for my talk later in coach training today. So our choice is to be attached to matter or spirit. To the extent that we select being attached to matter, then we're slaves. Then we're slaves of that which attachment means I'll control it to be happy, and then it controls me, and I'm making myself miserable. And we get to choose to be attached to spirit, to get attached to verses like this. Get attached to verses like this. Get attached to chanting Krishna's names. Then we're free. Then that's why it's described. Mukti Svayam Mukti Mukulitanjali Sevatesman. Then we're liberated from the pushings and pullings of the ropes of the modes of material nature, because then we're completely independent from degrading material desires. I've shared this maybe a few months ago. In 1944, in one of his first Back to Godheads, maybe it was the first Back to Godhead. So Prabhupada has an article where he analyzes theosophy. Madame Blavatsky's, it was a philosophy, probably still pretty popular in some places, called theosophy. Lots of places today, I think Rudolf Steiner was very involved with theosophy. And so Prabhupada analyzed it. Apparently it was like popular in India at that time, maybe still. And he has some, in the article, he has some extensive quotes from like the Theosophical Society, their main pamphlet or advertisement. And it describes something like, we will not rest peacefully at night as long as the weak are oppressed by the strong, and things like that. And Prabhupada quotes Hashem, and then Prabhupada says that these are nice sentiments. And in Vaishnavism, we kind of have a different approach. Our approach isn't about the weak won't be oppressed by the strong. Our approach is make everyone so strong they won't be oppressed. So this is just wonderful from my point of view. I mean, I really like this stuff. So of course, this is not meant to be like unempathic. It goes right along with empathy. Prahlad Maharaj, when Prabhupada cites paragons, personal examples of compassion and empathy, he often cites Prahlad Maharaj, also Haridas Thakur, Vasudev Dutt, Jesus. So Prahlad Maharaj describes Paradukha Dukhi. He describes that a Vaishnav soul, a Bhakti Yoga soul, feels pain at the pain of others. Krishna describes that in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and then when Prabhupada says that our approach is to make everyone so strong that they won't be oppressed, what's he talking about there? He's talking about that everyone is so filled with transcendental knowledge, so filled with that param drishtina divartate, so filled with that higher taste of spiritual life, that we won't become addicted and attached and needy for material so-called pleasures and satisfaction. Because as long as we're needy, lusty, greedy, envious, then we're putting out an advertisement. Please exploit me. Please exploit me. Please exploit me. We're setting ourselves up to be oppressed and exploited. That doesn't justify if someone has corrupted, oppressive desires. It doesn't justify what they're doing. It's just that, but the material world means jivo jivasya jivanam. One living entity is food for another. And with Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to not participate in one living entity as food for another. We get to not participate in that. How? By transforming the quality of our desire for material to desire for devotional service to Krishna. Then I'm not going to, I have no greed, no lust, no material envy that'll pull me to degrade myself and then to exploit others, to get victims to satisfy my gross or subtle material desires. Yeah. Okay. So this is real independence. Yeah. Real independence. And I know myself. Sure, we can look at social structures and things like that, and communism, Marxism, capitalism, socialism, oligarchy, monarchy, democracy. Whatever you want to call it. And I know where I've always come from is just for me personally, that like my service is to focus on consciousness, starting with my own. Not that I'm particularly sincere or adept at it, but at least in principle, because whatever the system, call it socialism, communism, capitalism, oligarchy, monarchy, whatever the system's inhabited by people with a particular consciousness. And if the consciousness is filled with greed, lust, envy, illusion, deception, then whatever the system, whatever the social structure, economic structure, political structure, it's going to be a miserable place to live. And whatever the system, if it's inhabited with people who realize who they are, spirit, souls, and are naturally peaceful and joyful and naturally empathic and compassionate, and all the qualities of the soul, then it's going to be, towards Vaikuntha, a place it'll be a nice place to associate. So this verse, text 12, chapter 9, canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam says, Pravala Vaidurya Minala Varchasa Parisparat Kundala Mali Malina. Some of them are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion and have garlands on their heads blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your presence and attention. Thank you, everyone. I welcome at this time any questions or comments. Malini.
Hare Krishna. Last night we were in our Vaishnavi reading group. We were reading from Light of the Bhagavata.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada was describing how he was describing the hippies and how dirty they were and like that. And he said, like, after chanting Hare Krishna, then they were effulgent and they were looking like the inhabitant of Vaikuntha.
Well.
That's just like, it's interesting because there is a geography of Vaikuntha and there is also the consciousness of Vaikuntha.
Yeah.
And it's true that when we meet devotees that really practice Krishna consciousness, they do have an effulgence and a beauty that's very different than people who are not absorbed in God consciousness.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that from Light of the Bhagavad. Yeah, that's such it's a book that's not often mentioned from Srila Prabhupada, but it's so poetic. It's such a poetic presentation, and yeah, right. So yeah, your comment, it relates to Rupa Goswami's verse that Prabhupada often quotes, Ihayasya harirtasya kamrinamana sagira nikilas vastasu jivan mukta sauchyate. That by practicing devotional service, even in this body, we get to experience Vaikuntha. And Prabhupada, in Light of the Bhagavad, as you said, is making the point that, and then that Vaikuntha, that spiritual effulgence, that luster, that shines brightly, even while in this body, to the extent that we're engaging in devotional service.
Yes. And then there was a discussion last night, and I like to bring it, if nobody else wants to bring it, I will bring that discussion to the table today. Because you spoke about how the material energy, like everything we see here is a shadow. Yeah. So what about like the beautiful flower and rainbows and butterflies and everything? Is at all pointless? Like, what's the point of like appreciating nature, appreciating the beauty if it's anyways just a shadow and it's just material attachment? So is it all pointless? That's a question that came up last night and we discussed, but I think it's very appropriate to the class you just gave.
Sure, yeah. Well, sure, we can appreciate, okay, so like this morning before the second part of the program, so I came into the jump room and I saw, Laura had picked flowers. She picked nice flowers. So we can appreciate, material nature is beautiful. In one sense, it's dense, it's dull compared to spiritual nature, but it's beautiful. Okay, so then, so we can appreciate it. And it's natural to appreciate it. The sunrise, the sunset, the flowers, beautiful flowers. All right, nice. Okay, and then our appreciation finds its perfection when we go, okay, so whose nature is this? Okay, so like this flower is beautiful. Let's appreciate it. Let's not take it for granted. Let's be grateful. And I go, wow, I'm enjoying the smell. All right, higher than that is let's offer it with love and devotion to its source and creator. offer it with love and devotion to Krishna. And then after Krishna accepts, then we smell the fragrance of the flower, and then we get purified. So nature, yeah. So I have my nature, you have your nature. Wherever there's a nature means there's a person. So wow, the trees, the flowers, the sky, the ocean, the beach, whose nature is it? So let's appreciate, wow, just like we might appreciate a painting. It's not like, that's not useless. Wow, this is such artistic. Wow. And we naturally wonder, I wonder who that painter is and what he's like, what she's like. So appreciate nature in connection with the personal source of nature. And then we get purified. And then as we experience, this nature is so beautiful, so wonderful. But okay, like such beautiful flowers here. I have these, what are they called? Azaleas? I have all sorts of azaleas, more than any other year. Beautiful, beautiful. And I should be more appreciative, but it touches my heart. It really improves the quality of my day. Okay, still, any azalea flower in 2 days, 3 days, in a month, it's going to fade and wilt. So material nature has its beauty, amazing beauty. At the same time, it's just a shadow of the beauty of spiritual nature, where nothing fades and everything is eternal and ever blissful and ever expanding in joy and personal joyful exchange, even the flowers and the trees and the blades of grass and the rivers. So sometimes we want to emphasize this is just a shadow to help ourselves to get more sincere and urgent. Let me immerse myself in eternal spiritual nature, eternal spiritual sound. And sometimes, we want to appreciate Krishna's nature. Krishna's material nature is amazing. Krishna says in 10th chapter Bhagavatam, Atavabo Nektina Kim Gatena Tavarjuna Vistabhyamidam Krishnam Ekam Sen. He goes that this nature is beautiful, glorious, powerful, wonderful, and it springs from just a spark of my splendor. So there's so much Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. It's about appreciating material nature in connection with appreciating the personal source. Thank you, Melanie. I appreciate your question and the direction of that conversation. Thank you.
So with that, right, we can't offer other parts of nature. You can't offer the ocean to Krishna. I can offer flowers, and I just I'm hearing just being in that consciousness of inquiry and appreciation for the creator, for Krishna, for the one behind the material creation. And you mentioned smelling flowers, and I was like, oh, I love smelling flowers. Like I love smelling them so much. I'm very attached to my sense of smell and what it does to my whole body.
Yeah.
So, but I can still do that, right? I can offer flowers and still enjoy my.
Yes.
I mean, that's enjoying my senses.
Yes.
I will say that I'm attached in that way, and then I had an image of myself in the ocean, but I was like screaming Krishna while I was swimming. So.
That's Krishna consciousness. Yeah, that's Krishna consciousness. Yeah, different aspects of material nature we integrate and dovetail into Krishna consciousness in different ways. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, amongst bodies of water, I am the ocean. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate the greatness of the ocean. We can appreciate the greatness of Krishna. Prabhupada was at a Franciscan monastery. Maybe it was Australia, maybe Germany. And so the priests or the monks, they were glorifying Saint Francis, who is known as, yeah, brother sun, sister moon, and the birds. And so they said, so what's your view on that, Swamiji? And Prabhupada said, this is God consciousness. That, St. Francis, he's realizing God's beauty everywhere in the birds and the sun and the moon. This is Krishna consciousness. So appreciating the personal source of the sky, the moon, the ocean. And this, in one sense, sometimes we talk about this body is a temporary place full of miseries, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death, and it's old age, disease, death. We focus there sometimes. And also we can focus, this is an amazing, beautiful creation. The most amazing computer isn't even 1/1,000,000th of 1% as amazing as the human body, or even the body of a mosquito for that matter. So we can appreciate what a craftsman God is. It is described in the Bhagavatam. The birds are Krishna's artistic sense. So it's not necessarily we need to offer everything, but we can appreciate the Creator, and that's God consciousness.
It's pretty amazing. You can cut your skin and it just heals, It's amazing.
Yeah. It is so amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Prabhupada would sometimes say, where like in terms of material empirical science, they go, oh no, there's no creator, it just all happened by chance. Okay. So Prabhupada would say, okay, do you know the chemical constituency of an egg? Oh yeah, that's easy to figure out. There's the shell and the white and the yellow, right? You can maybe get the chemicals for $12.42 or whatever. I mean, okay. So Prabhupada would say, I give you the chemicals, can you create a chicken? Well, no. So Prabhupada would say, well then the chicken is a better scientist than you, right? Because the chicken knows how to relate with the egg to create another chicken. Okay, so yeah, it's so amazing that it comes together, and that however advanced we are in material science, we can't even create a mosquito. Thank you, Laura. Len Cohen.
Hi, good morning. I apologize for coming on late to class today because I was trying for 45 minutes to get my computer to cooperate and work. So obviously God didn't create computers because they're so fallible and so stubborn sometimes technologically. Just another creation of man. That's a big failure, a big F.
I appreciate your sincerity and persistence, and here you are. All right.
Yeah. So what kind of boggles my mind about this these verses about the residents of Vaikuntha, and they have they're blue like Krishna. They have four hands. So to me, obviously, they have four arms too, right? It's not just the hands. And this just seems so alien to me. All of the residents of Vaikuntha, I mean, first of all, there's so many Vaikuntha planets. It's 3/4 of the universe, of all the universes are Vaikuntha planets. We're only like 1/4 in the material universes. So all these residents walking around looking like the Vishnu form of Krishna, with four arms. And, until today, I was thinking, well, sure, I want to go to the Vaikuntha planet. Yeah, I want to be there. I want to be there with Krishna because I was seeing Krishna as the two-armed cowherd boy. But now I see it, well, do I really want to have four arms and look so alien? I'm questioning this now a little bit. It's a little scary to me, actually. It reminds me of this science fiction film I saw back when I was a child, which scared the hell out of me, called Invaders from Mars. And the alien had these like 4 arms, kind of, and it was in a little globe, and it was terrifying.
Huh.
And so now I'm thinking, whoa, Vaikuntha Planets, 4-arm form. Here's my grandson saying hello.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Anyway,
Hey, we can bring the Maharaj peanuts out.
that's not so sattvic. We don't
Only-
need underwear here. Anyway,
I need his clothes. Where did you put them?
in the bedroom on the floor. Yeah, so yeah, it just seems so alien to me, and not at all like us. I thought that we are shadows of the way things are in the spiritual world. But we're not. This 4-armed form. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it. So I don't know if you could help me out with this, David, or I'm kind of like shocked actually that there's so many residents and they all have 4 arms. So we don't look anything like that.
Thanks
You know
for
what I'm saying?
sharing. Yeah, I think so. Maybe I have some idea what you're saying. Yeah, thank you. Then.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Well, actually, what's most emphasized in our line through Srila Prabhupada, the 6 Goswamis, is actually when the soul's love is most fully developed, then Krishna reveals himself like in Goloka Vrindavan form. I just want to share that. I mean, there's many aspects to what you expressed and many places we can go. So it's described in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Shanta Sadaiva Vidayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam Govindamadi Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes, and who the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. Yeah, so like here on my wall, there's a 2-armed Krishna playing the flute. There on your wall, Len, there's Krishna in Dvarka with his queens having a water fight. So, okay, so that's actually the topmost, innermost Vaikuntha planet is Goloka Vrindavan, where there's not the 4-armed forms. And so there's variety that in the spirit, just like in the material world, there's variety, and just like maybe not so much now. I mean, the world is so international now, but like we were growing up in the 60s or 70s, and we might hear about Europe, and it's like, well, that's different than Philadelphia. At the same time, okay, Paris, London, Italy, not so, but then, okay, we hear maybe about Fiji or Saudi Arabia or the villages of China. I mean, oh, that's really alien. That's really alien. There's these places that are just like a lot different than Pennypack Park in Philadelphia. Just a lot different. Yeah. And that's really alien. And so just like we have so much, and then, maybe as we get older, we visit some of these places and then we go, oh, they're actually, people like us. So, yeah, so just like on this planet, there's so many varieties, even if we get out of the human species, like some living entities develop a particular consciousness and they get the bodies of fish or they get the bodies of birds. And for that's just like, wow, how do they fly? I can swim. I mean, I can hold my breath underwater for 60 seconds, but they're just like all the time. So they have particular consciousness and they develop a particular body to live in the water, to live in the air. So there's so much variety amongst humans and amongst other species here. And so, yeah, so in the spiritual planets, there's even more choices, and it's all substance, not shadow. There's even more choices in the spiritual planets, including forms that seem really alien, really alien. And there's also the two-armed forms, which is actually the Ete Chamsa Kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam. Two-armed Krishna is the source of all the four-armed forms and all the material and spiritual energies. Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matasaram Pravartate. I'm reminded right towards the beginning of the Old Testament, in the Bible, it describes that God created humans, B'Tselem Elohim, B'Tselem Elohim. B'Tselem in modern Hebrew, Tsilum means photocopy. So B'Tselem means God created humans in his image, which indicates that the original source is two-armed, right? So the Bible indicates Krishna. And at the same time, just there's so much variety, even in the material sphere, even on this one tiny planet, also in the spiritual sphere, some might go, four-armed form, that's cool, I'm going for that. There's choices.
Questions?
Yeah, I think I just need to broaden my mind and open it up more to accepting differences in people and different bodies, whatever. Be more not so
Not so provincial or narrow-minded.
yes, narrow-minded. I didn't want to say it, but yeah. Yeah, sure. There's many different varieties on this planet, different skin colors, different races.
Yeah.
Like you say, might seem alien to somebody coming from Pennypack Park and going to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing here,
Same
going
thing.
from our material planet to a Vaikuntha planet. So yeah, it's just a matter of me being more accepting of differences, right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Len. I appreciate your realizations.
And, I wanted to appreciate Dhira Govinda, because in your class, you describe all the different type of liberation. And one being that to have the same form as Vishnu.
Yeah.
And so the art of the devotee is not going to desire that.
Yeah.
So the art of the devotee is not attracted to the four-arm form. And is not even attracted to the form of Vishnu. But there is some people who may be attracted. There is people who worship Vishnu in his four-arm form, or Durga in her arm form, and they are really connected to that. And then naturally they will develop a different kind of desire. And we are trained to only develop the desire to serve Krishna and to please Krishna.
Thanks for that, Malini. I'll just add a distinction that comes to mind. So if someone is serving Vishnu to get a four-armed form like that, then they are devotees, and they're devotees because Vishnu is Vishnu Tattva. If someone's interested in serving Kali, then they're not devotees. Probably because bhakti is only for Krishna, or Krishna's Vishnu Tattva. Like we can have bhakti for Nrsimhadev, we can have bhakti for Narayan. We can't have bhakti for a demigod, because if it's a demigod, we're really only interested in doing business. We want something from the demigod. There's no pure devotional service. At the same time, even in terms of complete purity, there are degrees. And again, like that deepest purity of the soul manifests as serving Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. Your comment, Malini, reminds me of the pastime, it's there in Krishna book, 10th canto of Bhagavatam, that Krishna disappeared from the rasa dance with the gopis. And so the gopis are looking for Krishna. They're looking in the forest, they're lamenting, where's Krishna, where's Krishna? And then Narayan, Vishnu, Narayan in the four-armed form is there. And the gopis recognize this is God himself. in the four-armed form. But they weren't interested. They were like, Narayan, respects. Have you seen Krishna? Have you seen Krishna? So they were polite and respectful, but they weren't particularly interested. Oh, we want a four-armed form like you. They're just, have you seen Krishna? Thanks for sharing. Laura, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I think I have two. Well, first I wanted to ask, I think I might know your answer, but it's like, can there be a both and? Like, I like what you just said about the demigods. I think that's making sense. I'm understanding what that's meaning, like, because the bhakti is different. The devotion would be there if it's like a demigod. But I mean, I'm experiencing like a both and I've had a few different experiences, seeing that some other people still do like a ceremony for like Shiva last week or 2 weeks ago, but they're bhaktis, like, and they bring that in. So you're agreeing with that?
Yeah. Well, we want to look at what's my consciousness, what's my mentality in serving, honoring, worshiping Shiva.
Right.
Because I don't know if you're here, but a little over a week ago, Anandini gave a class on Shiva.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay. So Vaishnavanam Yatha Sambhu, Shiva is the greatest devotee of Krishna. So for, serving Shiva in that mode, many who serve Shiva, it's because they want some special powers in a material way. These whole verses, this whole chapter, this whole part of the Bhagavatam, it's all about and spoken by the main demigod. His name is Brahma. But we're not approaching Brahma like Hiranyakashipu approached Brahma. We're approaching Brahma as a pure devotee of Krishna. And so then it's bhakti. Then it's like, if we approach a demigod to give me devotion, pure bhakti to Krishna or Vishnu, then it's bhakti. If we approach a demigod for material benefit, then it's not bhakti.
Yeah, I like that distinction. That's helping. I don't know the word. Yeah, I can see that. Like, in my experience with some of the demigods, I'm asking for some kind of thing that they represent, perhaps, rather than the bhakti. So thank you for that. And then the other thing, when you were talking about, thank you for your question, Len, and opening up David's answer to that. It was fun to hear that. That really helps me too. And I've used that example sometimes, just like thinking about how we're on a planet, like to expand my mind. And the alien quality, I mean, even coming here, right? These alien elephant ear tree things were alien to me. So simple as that. It's easy for me to think about things like that and seeing how so much is possible, so much more beyond my understanding, but it still seems like imaginational to me. But what you said something, it's, when you were talking about the animals, you said substance, not shadow. I guess I didn't catch it right away, but I didn't really understand I don't know if you remember what you said, but I didn't understand what you meant by that. So, I thought it was all shadow. So it was like, you said it was substance, not shadow.
Well, everything in the material world, like, this is shadow.
Yeah.
Whether it's the form of an animal, a deer, a dog, a cat, whether it's the form of jewelry, whether it's material dancing, that's the shadow. And substance, so like the cows in Goloka Vrindavan, that's the substance. And the cows in this world are shadows of that.
Okay.
There's airplanes in the spiritual world, and they're living entities, and that's substance, that's eternal substance. And the airplanes in this world are kind of perverted, distorted shadows of the original airplanes in the spiritual world. Same with, like, we have material eyes, that's shadow, and the soul has spiritual eyes, that's substance. So that's the principle. Everything in the material creation is like a distorted, perverted reflection, shadow reflection of what exists in its pure form in the spiritual realm. And the more that we hear and chant and purify our heart, we have more and more ecstatic taste of the pure original spiritual form of everything.
And we ourselves are shadowy representations.
These bodies are.
Yes.
But the spirit soul is of the spiritual substantial nature.
So who are we in our most spiritual form? Is that existed somewhere else? Or only on this
Yeah,
planet?
in our spiritual form, we have, or we are a spiritual body with spiritual eyes and spiritual legs, and we're serving and interacting in a spontaneous play of divine love with Krishna in that realm of pure substance.
This is a different thing, but does it ever talk about when the spirit soul enters a body in any of the teachings here?
Oh yeah.
What do you have to say about that? Short amount of time.
Yeah, well, this is yam yam vapi smran bhavam tyajyanti kalevram tam tame veti kontya sadatad bhavavita. That whatever state of being we're absorbed in when the soul leaves this material body, that consciousness brings us to the next material body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's transmigration. That's transmigration of the soul. According to the desire, according to the quality of our desire, we enter into the body of someone named Laura Swartz or Len Cohen or David Wolf, or we enter into the body of a hog or a blade of grass or a fish. That's the principle. And it's described in great subtlety and complexity all through these books. I'm just reading a section now towards the end of the 4th canto of Bhagavatam. Narada Muni describes in very nuanced way the process of transmigration and the mind with the basic principle. And we've given these examples. These are simplistic examples, but to get the idea, if my goal in life, my meditation, I just want to eat anything and everything. Okay, the human body is not the best form to just eat any slop. So maybe I'll get the body of a pig. Let's say if my goal in life is to build a lot of muscle mass. Okay, so all right, the human form isn't the best. What do you mean the human form? Okay, so maybe in the next life I'll get the body of a rhinoceros or an elephant or a gorilla. They've got muscle mass, and some of them are vegetarian, by the way. Yeah, let's say my meditation is sex, enjoying sex. Again, human body's not the best for that. There are some species. I heard pigeons or monkeys might have sex 50, 100 times a day. So maybe we get the body of a monkey, like that. So it's described there's 8,400,000 species of material forms. And according to our consciousness, we enter that sort of body. It's no accident that we're in this particular body.
Thank you. I think actually I didn't distinguish my question. It was sparking my curiosity about like a human form of a baby when the soul enters a human form.
All forms. Soul enters a time of conception. Yeah, it's described. Yeah. Karmana Deva Netrena Jantra Deho Papataye. That's described in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. Soul enters a time of conception.
And is there more readings about like other times, like if that doesn't happen or if it's later or if it like takes a while for the soul to come? I'm just curious if there's
as soon as there's growth, that's evidence that there's a soul, right? So as soon as just the fact that the embryo starts to develop from a little microcosm to a pea to, as soon as there's growth, that's evidence that the soul's inside.
Yeah.
There is detail. There's a chapter in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam called movements of the living entities, and it describes kind of the growth, the evolution of the embryo in the womb over the 9 months once the soul enters at the time of conception, and it describes some details. So the principle is that, because in other words, like any scientist can go into the laboratory, try to create something that's going to grow. They can't do it because they don't have the ingredient of the soul. They don't have they can't create life. So just the fact that the embryo is growing means there's a soul.
They need the container of the womb.
What's that?
And so they need the container of the womb, unless science is figuring out how to do that without a womb now. But Like you can, they can do the petri dishes, but you still need the container of a wound.
Yeah.
Some analogy there. Thank you. I'm done.
Thanks for your questions. Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you for this text, and to Marie for connecting it with the discussion last night. On one hand, it seems like, wow, that's so interesting that these two things happen back to back. And on the other hand, it's like, Krishna, you are deliberately putting these two together. I appreciated your response to the question she reiterated, that Marie reiterated, and I relate to the awe of nature and the godliness in nature and the creation and the like beyond understanding the complexity of it. And it's something I've been fascinated with since a child. And I think I'm being challenged by the Gita and these readings, the Krishna consciousness point of view or way of being, that I to your point, when you mentioned that in some cases we talk about how much suffering there is and how horrible this world is, and it's just a shadow, and I guess I hear so much negativity, and in that way it feels negative to me, in comparison to like that sort of innocent childlike discovery that was so true for me as a child. And I feel challenged now thinking, I just feel challenged by I do, it's like I have seen it as God. And then the wording that I'm reading sounds not as loving to me about the reality we know, this material world. And yeah, I it seems like a lot to wrap my head around.
I hear, you had the discussion last night from Light of the Bhagavat, and this conversation here, and you're reading Gita, and you have your conceptions. You were always someone who appreciated, loved nature, and it was always connected with God to you. And so, there's so much. You're reading the Gita, we're reading Bhagavatam. There's so much in there, like giving practical, detailed guidance of how to appreciate, realize God in nature. That describe the rivers or the veins of God, and the trees or the hairs on the body. There's the birds are God's artistic sense. So so material nature is beautiful, and then the assertion here is that and spiritual nature is actually millions of times more beautiful, trillions of times, if we can imagine. So it's both true. Material nature is beautiful, and the reality is we're going to these bodies will experience disease, old age, and death, and we don't want that. So then what happens after? Just like, so what happens to the soul upon the death of this body? So it's giving the option that we can enter into spiritual nature, where we have eternal spiritual bodies engaged in joyful spiritual relationship with spiritual earrings and airplanes, with bodies that never grow old, never become diseased, never die, the actual substance. So so sometimes to support us to get serious about spiritual life, there can be rather bleak descriptions of material life. And then the other perspective is simultaneously true. Of course, the azaleas are beautiful, and the sky and the ocean and the trees and the beach. Material nature is beautiful, and let's increase our realization of how to connect material nature with Krishna, and then material nature becomes spiritual, because we're relating to it in a way that enhances our realization of who we are as spirit souls, part and parcel of God.
Thank you for that. That is clarifying and much nicer. I guess it's not that we always need nice things to hear, but it ties it together better. It ties these two seemingly opposing views together. That the introduction of bleakness and pointing out the darkness of this material world is to turn us towards God, and in that process also seeing spiritualizing what's already beautiful even more, and knowing that it's even better once we get liberated, which seems like an eternity away. So anyway, thank you for that, tying those together in the way that you did. That's helpful.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your questions and comments. I appreciate your childlike spirit of discovery.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhakta Lin.
Yes, thank you. So I'm thinking now, because we come from the Gaudiya Vaishnav lineage. So Krishna is Vishnu, is just a form of Vishnu. I mean, they're the same. So I'm wondering now, why don't we do more? Why isn't there more focus on the form of Narayan and Vishnu as the four-armed form? I know that's worship in the mode of awe and reverence, right? But and that's not kind of what we do. We're doing devotional service. Well, when we're doing, yeah, if we're thinking about Krishna and doing devotional service to Krishna, we're also doing something. It's also to Vishnu, right? So where is that part of our whole lineage? I know it doesn't really relate to the gopis and Krishna in Vrindavan and Goloka Vrindavan, and all those pastimes. But yet it's somewhere in there because that's in our name. We're Vaishnavas, so we worship Vishnu. So how does that all fit into our practice, our sadhana?
Okay, thank you. Okay, a key verse in the Bhagavatam says, Ete chamsa kla pumsa Krishnas tu Bhagavan Svayam. Krishna is the source of all incarnations, all avatars. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Hamadirhi Devanam Maharshinam Sarvasha. Krishna is the source of all demigods and sages. So to say Krishna is a form of Vishnu, it's not, no, the Vishnus are expansions of Krishna, including Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So all of the forms of Vishnu, all of the avatars, Varahadev, Vamanadev, Nrsingadev, they're all within Krishna. They're all within Krishna. There are pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya is there. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, and he'll manifest the Varaha form. He'll manifest Ramachandra form like that. So Krishna is the source and origin of all the forms of Godhead. That's an important point. And in our line, we Gaudiya Vaishnava, the main emphasis is Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan. And at the same time, we're recommended that even if we're like serving a deity of Radha Krishna, we serve the deity in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, so that we don't become overly familiar and we don't commit offenses. So it's all there. So like when we're reading about Vaikuntha Planets, which is there, so it's in Bhagavatam like that these are all categories, these are all emanations from the original form, Sri Krishna. And so sometimes we're reading about the emanation, sometimes we're reading about the original form. And your question for me relates to the ideas we serve through our current link spiritual master, our current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. Because if we get into trying to serve Krishna directly in Goloka Vrindavan, I don't have the purity for that. I don't have the realizations. I'll bring my mundane conceptions to what that's all about. So we serve, we serve Srila Prabhupada, and we please him, and then we're pleasing Krishna and Vishnu. So even in worshiping the deity of Radha Krishna, Hare Krishna Bhaktasi.
Hare Krishna.
So even in worshiping the deity of Radha Krishna, Prabhupada recommends that we do it in an awe and reverent spirit, although it's a very intimate type of relationship. Thank you, Bhaktilen. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your association, everyone. Hare
Krishna.